Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited about this one because we have somebody here that I, for a very long time, have wanted to talk about. When I was a kid growing up, I used to buy the WCW NWO trading card set. Tops had made them, and I used to go, and one of the cards that I had, well, there were many of them, I had the entire set, was this guy here. A man that has done so much for our sport, a living legend, and he is back out there in the wrestling world. We're happy to see it. We have a connection with a recent guest, and I'll talk about that with him. Obviously, he was just with him, well, just about less than 2 weeks ago at the convention. Everyone's talked about WrestleCade. We'll get into that. We'll talk about his journey. We'll talk about what he's been up to. We'll talk about some moments. I'll ask him about some other people that he's wrestled that I know. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll also get into who knows whatever else. But I know that this man has done countless podcasts recently. I can understand why. He's obviously one of those guys that I almost felt was an unsung hero. I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about maybe a connection with Brock Lesnar, and he was the first to do a move that Brock Lesnar's done famously. Yeah, I'll get into all that, but I have to introduce you formally because I had Raven on, obviously the man who led the flock, and I didn't get a chance to do my intro with him, but I got a chance to do it with certainly Rhino, another man you wrestled many, many years ago, and I'm going to do it because we also have something for you, and I want to get this show and weekend here in style on Sportswire Radio going, the number one global radio station where all music and wrestling matters. So with that, without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the number one cable sports show, WCW, MCW, and WWF legend, the one and only Seth Boy. My friend, how are we doing?
We're good. I don't know how I'm going to live up to that intro. That lead in, yeah, I don't know about legend, but I'll.
You know what? I mean, I've had
I'll take it when I can hear it.
I'll do it every day for you. It's funny you're wearing the Black Label Society shirt. I'm actually friends with somebody that, a great band. My mom just saw them play, and I'm kind of big in the rock world the last year or so. And I actually am friends with the guy that engineered the 1919 Eternal album, which was Scott Gutierrez. So I saw the Black Label Society shirt. I'm like, I like you already. I liked you then 20 years ago, and I like you now. But we'll talk about that maybe later. But it is an absolute honor to have you on here, sir. And I want to thank you so much for all that you've done for our sport. I want to thank you for everything that you've done for my childhood and everything else. But I got to talk to you because you're out here. You got some stuff to talk about, which I'm excited about. And for those that are listening and watching here in prime time on the brightest lights, the biggest stage, the platform you most certainly helped build, Sports by Radio, Mr. Sick Boy, talk to me about how good it felt to be reunited with the flock at WrestleCade.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. It had been quite a while, number of years, many moons before we were. I think it was the same collective group the last time we got together, and that was, my gosh, that was 2010, somewhere there. I'm not sure on the dates, but it had been a while. Yeah, other guys I think in different parts and have seen each other and crossed paths. I haven't, other than with Lodi. Because Lodi and I are good friends.
Yeah, you've done some stuff with him over the years.
We always stayed connected, and so it was pretty neat. It was pretty cool. It was definitely like a throwback, for me.
Yeah,
just sure. And see, and not only fought, but getting to see a lot of other guys. A lot of other people in the business. Met some people I hadn't met.
This is his last appearances with the face paint. I mean, you were there with him too. I mean, that's that other cool thing that this is the end of staying in the face paint, with everything.
Yeah, I know, and I wish I had known at the time because I would have tried to search him out. But I think he was down on like a whole other level, from us. But yeah, that would have been cool to have sought him out on that. I would have gotten a picture, obviously. With the knowing that's going to be the last of the paint.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy just how time flies. I think it was so good to see all of you back, especially because I had Raven on in the documentary. I'm sure you've heard about the documentary and seen it. And considering what the struggles that not only Raven's gone through, but obviously the likes of Riggs and Perry Saturn. So it was really great to see all of you guys together because we know the struggles that those three have went through. And to see everybody together, I think that's got to also feel good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially like Riggs and I were really close.
Yep.
Especially during the time in WCW, we traveled together. We hung out outside of the business together, um, and and then once we were done, he actually lived with my dad for a while.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he actually moved in, lived with my dad for a while, because we're both from the same area. From Hilton Head, South Carolina. He's from
Yep.
Savannah, Georgia. So, um, yeah, he had moved in with my dad and was living with my dad for a while, and we'd always maintained a close relationship. And then when I moved back to the area in 2005, we picked that up, and we were there, and then we just kind of split, and I think that's when he was going through a lot of the things he was going through. I don't need to say much on that. I think
Yeah, no,
everybody kind of
yeah,
knows
you don't have to. I know all about
where
it, and
that's at.
I always liked him because obviously the American males, him and Buff Bagwell, and then I remember him after WCW, he went into ECW because he was friends with Rob Van Dam, and they did a storyline there, and I always thought he was one of those guys that. He was another underappreciated guy because he had the look, he could go in the ring, and but it's good to see him back out there. And Perry Saturn, I mean, certainly he had, went through a lot, and he was in the documentary, so it's great to see that you and everybody was there, and we were missing Kidman for obvious reasons, but
Yes,
we'll leave that
yeah.
at that.
And then obviously, I mean, Perry, I was, we weren't like super close, but we were close in the flock, and he was always really good to me, advice wise, and different things, and was just always level headed, and always treated me like, I mean, as much time as he had in the business compared to what I had, because I had maybe put in a year at that by that time, like in the
Yeah.
business total, I'm putting it in with training and being in the flock. So actual like time working in front of people and being in crowds and having that opportunity, he had done that just multiple
Oh,
times.
yeah, I mean, he had an amazing
Yeah.
career at
And,
ECW.
and and I mean, same with Rave, but I mean, none of those guys ever treated me. I had others treat me a little different, you know, and but they never treated me, any different. They were very accepting and very cool in terms of just if I asked any questions or need anything. And I've said before with Rave, it was very quiet with him. He didn't offer a lot of stuff. With me, it was more just listening to his approach and what he does. And everybody's a little different in how they, pass along knowledge and things like that. And of course, Rave, I think we even admit he was just in a different space at that time.
Yeah, well, the
You know,
documentary shows it. I mean, he was just going through a lot, obviously, when at that era and that time. And I mean, Lodi certainly had it differently than you did, watching the documentary. So it was
yeah,
a lot. Was there pressure going into the flock? Because you're in the power plant, you're in the you're wrestling, but you really didn't have much in ring experience. And you go into this group. Raven famously comes to WCW. He had been the ECW world champion before. In fact, his debut appearance on Nitro, I always thought was so fascinating. It was the same day that Kurt Hennig had appeared. So, Raven was a big deal coming in. He has this group. Perry Saturn obviously was a big deal in his own right. This group is forming. And was that pressure for you just going right into the fire with those big names and heavy hitters?
it wasn't so much the names as it was because I'd already been introduced and seen a lot of guys and around some guys. I think the biggest thing for me was just there was not a lot of direction in terms of like directly for me, like what to do. What's your character? We just came up with a name, and then it was basically up to me to try to formulate any type of direction or persona that I was going to have. To me, I think that was the biggest pressure because I just didn't know.
Yeah, it's tough because you're going in there, you don't have the experience, and I wanted to put obviously the photos up from you and everybody back together, and we can follow you on Instagram as well, and I'll put that link up later, and yeah, I mean, just a lot that you went through, going out there in a short amount of time, And now that you've got a chance to reflect on your career, I've never heard anybody ask you this question, and I'd be curious, do you have any regrets on your career and how the way things unfolded ultimately?
Uh, I think I think not being more assertive in certain areas, especially going to WWE, not standing up for myself, speaking up for me. I think hindsight's 2020.
Sure,
Obviously,
sure.
it's like if I could have known then what I know now, it'd have been completely different.
Yeah.
I think just in terms of me being a little more vocal, and I think that's just part of being a little naive, being really really green, and no one ever really smartened me up. Like it just wasn't like it was back in the days where they had territories and guys would run, and whether guys wanted to tell you anything or not, you learned because you were seeing. You
Well,
you
that's
were
like in the music business. I get a lot of these big, heavy hitters in hard rock and heavy metal, and it was like you learned about everything by, playing. You were on tour, you were learning, you were with the other bands, and I think wrestling is kind of like an apprenticeship in that way also. And you didn't really have that because you went to the power plant, you were in WCW, you were there, you wrestled about a year and a half on TV, then you go down to WWF and you're wrestling all these matches, but you didn't like I was watching your in-ring work, and it was funny to me because in WCW and WWF there was a difference. I felt like you were there, you were ready to get the call. It was almost like if you're a baseball player and you were in AAA, but you didn't get the call even though you were on the roster. You got the call, technically you got the call to be on the big leagues, but they didn't play you. And I kind of felt that your WWF run was kind of that way and such. I mean,
Yeah, you're spot on that. Is exactly like that. Everything that they wanted to throw out in terms of a character, it just nothing passed the test for whatever reason. And I get some of it. I mean, the biggest thing was the Val Venus stuff. That's how they wanted to debut me, and of course, he was going.
right.
They were in that transition. They were just catching so much heat from sponsors and stuff, and
Yeah.
that's why they moved him to right to censor.
Yep.
And then that fell through for me at that time, and it seemed like that was the storyline for me for my
Yeah, 'cause
WWF
I was
career.
watching you I watched a lot of your matches, obviously stuff that's out there on YouTube, Joe Bradley, the Haas brothers, Charlie Haas, who had, massive amounts of success, and a man I interviewed, Ryan. I mean, there was a lot of stuff out there, and I felt like your in-ring work was progressing. I mean, you were in there with, Just Joe. I mean, you were in there with a lot of guys, but usually when you wrestle as much as you did, you would have gotten a call. Like you're almost like, I hate to say it, but like you're like one of the few guys in wrestling history that wrestled as many dark matches and didn't get a call. Well, we're talking about a year and a half you were wrestling dark matches and you didn't get the call. I have to find that to be highly frustrating because you were there, and on top of
Yeah,
that, you were a guy in WCW. You were well known. You had matches with the likes of the British Bulldog, Disciple, aka Brutus the Barber Beefcake. You were in there with the Renegade, God rest. I mean, you had a long list of people you wrestled. Goldberg a couple times. But you were there, and you would have thought, okay, we're gonna bring him up. We're gonna give him the fine tuning. You went down to Memphis. You were there with all those other guys, and you were on the roster, but they didn't call you to pitch or they didn't call you to hit. I mean, it's got to be highly frustrating.
super frustrating. I still to this day, that's one of the things I just think about in terms of WWE not understanding why. Because you give me the ball, I'm going to run with it, and I'm much better going. Because I just had to come out as Scott Vick, and I'm like, I don't know who my persona is, and maybe that's again being green and not coming up with something.
Right.
And at times I just kind of revert back, and I actually thought about just doing the sick boy thing, but I couldn't do it for a long time because of rights issues up until when they bought,
WCW.
WCW. But by then, it's like things had started really shifting and going kind of crazy. And I go, well, I can still work like that because I thought that's where some of my best stuff was at, just chewing on the ropes and hearing voices and looking up to the ceiling and doing things. And I really wanted to, and I didn't even in WCW get to expand on that because I wanted to take that
Yeah, they
even
never
further.
really gave you I mean, you always were in like these 3-4 minute matches. It was never like, okay, let's give him in ring time. Let's give him that opportunity. Okay, you had the Benoit match, you had the DDP match on a Saturday night, but I never felt like they gave you that. You had the look. I remember even Mike Tenay, because I used to watch Thunder. I used to watch Saturday Night. So I remember as a kid, because I loved, even though I'm from Brooklyn, New York, I was a WCW fan more than I was a WWF fan, although I watched all wrestling. But, Mike Tenay would always say that you had the talent, you had the ability, but the other members of the flock seemed like they went where you should have been, if that makes sense.
Honestly, really out of that group, let's take Perry out of it and Rave out of it. But really out of that group, Kidman was the only one that really took off.
Yeah. He's still, he's still in
WWE. Man, he got to wrestle Hogan.
And beat him, by the way, multiple times.
And so it's like,
And married Tori Wilson, by the way, which some would say was even better than Hogan.
Oh, yeah, fighting. I love Billy. Billy and I were friends in WCW, and we were friends before the flock, well before the flock. So I love Billy, but I think Billy was and Billy's an awesome guy, but I think he might have been fighting a little bit out of his weight class with Tori. Tori was just...
I know Tori to this day looks like the same when I remember when she debuted with the NWO Wolfpack in early '99. It's crazy.
Yeah, and he's not far off because, like I said, Billy had a great personality, great sense of humor, great guy. So you could, because I know a lot of people have said like, they're like going Tori Wilson and Billy Kidman. It's like you don't know Billy. If you hang out with if you know Billy and see, Billy was very smart, very clever, very really, like I said, really good sense of humor, great personality. I'm not surprised.
Like with Rey Mysterio, I love the Filthy Animals. Him and Rey Mysterio together. I always thought that Billy Kidman was like, in terms of his face and look, when he grew out his hair, he was like a shorter version of Bret Hart. The way he looked, they were two different styles, wrestling wise.
Yeah, sure.
When he had that ability. He was there. He had it. He had
he had that, and Billy was so good at, like, a lot of guys that are really good. It's a timing. It's this just sense of knowing where to be. Judging, like, I'd wrestle a lot of guys, and it's like I'm having to tell them to, like, slow down, like, don't rush, like, just sell what I'm or give me time to sell. You hit me with something, like, give me time, and you got to know that. It's like, with especially it's like a hill or something where you come in and you pop a guy on a move. I'm not going to go, if it's a big move, I'm not going to go grab him right up, not unless it's something in the match we're trying to tell. But it's like, at that point, I want to really look what I just did, and and get the move over and let it kind of register with the fans. And that's something today that just drives me crazy. It's so fast paced, like, not to mention there's a ton of other things, but that's just one small.
I had Jumpin' Jim Brunzell last week, and he said something along the lines of that it's just like AEW and WWE are a carbon copy, and then everybody is trying to get to the finish, and everybody's trying to do every move possible. What do you think then about wrestling today?
Listen, I honestly, I think majority of it's just trash, to be honest with you. There are good elements. Obviously you got your Brock Lesnar's and your Randy Orton's, and I'm probably going to leave guys out, but there's still guys out there that still work. And when I see that, you see more of that character. It's not so rushed, but a lot of it, like the Darby Allin stuff, as crazy as he is, and not to take away from his athleticism, it's like, what's the meaning of taking that plate glass deal that he took? I don't even know what it was. It was like, there was no, like, I was always, the stuff I did get trained in and how to work, like where I said, where guys earlier, where I said guys didn't smart me up. They didn't smart me up to a lot of the politics of the business, the etiquette of the business. I got trained by really good people and really good guys in terms of, okay, here's what you do in the ring, what you don't do in the ring. And it's like, you want to work to the big bumps, make the high spots mean something. You just don't do high spots to do high spots. And I feel like today a lot of stuff is high spots just for high spots, or risk for no reason risk. Yeah. You go through that plate glass deal that they had laid out on those, I think they were like wooden saw benches or something. Laid that thing on. I'm like, bro, you could sever an artery or something doing that. And it's like, I mean, I thought like this, like when I was a kid, I thought this scaffold fold match with Midnight Express and Road
Yeah.
Warriors was insane. Like when Corny took that bump and fell, I thought, oh my god.
Well, look, in the 80s, I mean, who bled really? Now it's almost like everybody's got to bleed. Everybody's got to go out there and do the spot with the thumbtacks and the tables outside, and it's a totally different world.
Well, and they bleed on the hard way. They get it the hard way now, where it's like, yeah, you're going to bleed if you go through a glass. You're going to bleed if you're jumping 30 feet.
Glass is glass. Yeah, you can't fake going through glass. It's just crazy.
I just think there's not a lot of the character. Like people you want to invest in, especially now. I think you need it more than ever because it's like wrestling's been so exposed. Everybody knows the business inside and out now. Whereas when I was a kid, watching NWA and watching the Horsemen and the Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, the Koloffs. It was about the character. That's what really, obviously, the size of the guys.
Right, you waited until next week because there wasn't today the internet, there wasn't X, there wasn't,
and there's that too.
Yeah.
When you only had a couple pay-per-views a year.
Yeah.
And it was like you and actually you had less than that. I mean, before WrestleMania. There was nothing, and then I think WWF WrestleMania, and then it grew into like Royal Rumble.
Is the TBS specials only, right? If I'm not mistaken.
They did like the main event, and other than that, they had the Starcade, and then years later it started going to, but it was still only 2 or 3 years. So it was like you had this big buildup, and they didn't give away, like as awesome as Raw was at Nitro, it was like a pay-per-view. Yeah. They would have big matches on there. There was something about watching at the studios, CNN studios or wherever they filmed the NWA stuff back in the day, watching the Road Warriors just absolutely dismantle the Mulkey brothers. And it was like, it made you thirsty for when are they going to go in and get somebody like, Dusty, and I can't remember all the different feuds, but I know they had feuds with Midnight Express and, top of the line guy, like now you're really wanting to see that. And I thought that wrestling did a really good job at that time of just giving you enough to where now you're like really thirsty. Could you imagine the buy rates now on pay-per-views if they cut some of those pay-per-views down?
Forget about it. Yeah, but there's a rush now because of the contracts with the networks. Netflix and HBO Max, AEW has with TNT, TBS, and Saturday night's main event is on Peacock /NBA.
Yeah, it's that right there.
That's it. That's listen. I talk to a lot of bands all the time, and it's a different world even in rock music because bands don't sit on a bus and tour like they did, when you were wrestling, even in the 90s, where it's like 200-300 days a year. They do with fly-in. Yeah. What they do is they go and they play Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or some combination, and then that's it. It's a different world than the way it was, and I think it takes away the mystique of wrestling. And the other thing that I used to read religiously was the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the PWI. Yes. I always used to look at that, and as a kid growing up in Brooklyn, I would buy the trading cards. Your card obviously a part of it, and I would go to a little candy store here on Fifth Avenue and 76th Street, and I would look at the Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I think that's a different landscape and such. And and obviously we're very honored to have on the legendary Sick Boy, of course, a man that has done a lot of great things, and he is back out there. He's got an Instagram page. He's on Facebook. You can also check out the documentary Nevermore, The Raven Effect, and see Lodi in there and Perry Saturn. It's great to see the flock is doing well, and we'll give Mr. Sick Boy something in a little while. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice, figuratively and literally all music and wrestling. I'm going to tell you something that I bet you'd be surprised to hear. There's a lot of chatter about you were the guy that did the F5 before Brock Lesnar. Now, if I told you that you were the guy that did the F5 before Brock Lesnar did it, what would you say to that?
I did, but a different version. I know because Brock hadn't even started TV yet. No, I don't even think they had signed him yet.
I don't think he got. I know he got the call right after WrestleMania, but I don't think he started with them till late 2001, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
Yeah, my version was just different. It was Fireman's Carry, but I shifted up and then they bumped to the front, and I didn't bump off of it. And I'm not saying anything. My gosh, I was doing the pedigree. Are you kidding me?
I
For the
did see
cure.
that on
So,
one match.
and that was at a time where it was
I
like
think
that
they
was a
came to
well-known
Renegade
finish.
if I'm not mistaken. So you
And see, that was another thing being green. Like I was just like they Terry Taylor wanted me to do like this reverse camel clutch. I can't remember what they
okay.
called the thing, and I did it on Renegade. That was I think only did it like in a couple matches. I was like, I don't know, don't feel comfortable with this thing. I got to jump up and like, you know, uh, jump on this guy and then grab him from the back of the neck and pull up. And it's just like, I look like I'm pulling him into my crotch. It's just is not like I'm not like my God, you imagine doing that now with social media, you just get
Yeah, you would
destroyed on it.
yeah, cancel culture.
And I was just like, and somebody we were talking, I can't remember how it got brought up, but somebody had mentioned doing like the pedigree, and I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. They go, you're in two different companies. Like it doesn't matter, and everybody copies everybody in the business.
Yeah.
Like everybody takes in, they're like, you're not in the same company. If you're in the same company,
Randy
different.
Orton did DDP's the Diamond Cutter, right? I mean,
Yes, but I think, and I don't know. I think they might have called and asked permission or something like that. But I know I didn't call Hunter and ask for permission because nobody smartened me up to that. Because I was like 24 years old, this green guy, and I was like, okay, you're telling me it's cool to do, then I'm going to do it.
Right.
But yeah. But by far, I mean, Brock definitely got that move over a lot more than I did. It wasn't a finish of mine at all.
No.
I didn't use it as finish. It's really a setup move or just something I like throwing in there to catch somebody kind of off guard type thing. But no, came up with that down at the power plant with Chris Canyon.
Another guy, God rest his soul, that you were in the ring with, and he was one of those guys that I used to love watching on WCW. He was just the innovator. I mean, that's what he was. Mike's name was talking about all the time. He was such an innovator, in the ring and out the ring. And I always felt that another guy that went to WWE and they didn't do him right. I got to be honest. It was a common theme when guys from WCW went to WWE. Very few exceptions. Booker T. I'll throw Billy Kidman in for more outside of being working backstage. Rey Mysterio certainly, but there was almost all of the guys that went to WCW that were in WWE. They really did wrong. But Canyon was just one of those guys I used to love watching out there in the ring in WCW. Just what a talent.
He was another one, and I'm not saying it because we were good friends, and he was the reason I got into the flock. But I loved working with Chris. We had worked down. Those were the only matches I really had.
Yeah,
would be down at the power plant with Chris. We just work matches. We'd sit there and work for 30 minutes and just do a match. We'd do a 5-minute match, a 10-minute, a 30, a 60-minute. We just get in work, and he was just so easy to work with. Like everything was, he was one of those guys that it was so smooth. And I've had a few, but he sticks out. Steve Bradley sticks out. Yes, and it's a shame Steve didn't do more because
God rest his
Steve
soul,
was so smooth and just. We worked each other so many times in dark matches, and it's like he was that guy that knew just by the way I was moving where to position himself and what I was getting ready to feed him.
Pre-Jack Swagger almost, but with even more ability in the ring.
More psychology, more ring savvy. Yep. Like he would wait on me. I know we'd do a spot where he would close on me out of the turnbuckle, and I'd bump. And a lot of times I would get up because I wouldn't feed right into I knew it was going to be a DDT. I wouldn't feed right into the DDT. I would take that because he'd been bumping me around a bit. Now, again, it depended on where we were at in the match. If it was an early match, I might come up a little quicker because I shouldn't be as worn down. If I was a little later in the match and we're doing that, I'm going to sell a little more. I'm going to work. I'm going to do the Terry Funk, Tully Blanchard deal.
Absolutely.
But he would sit there and wait on me, and he never rushed me. He let me sell it. He waited for me he would let me sit there and keep his back I would have my back to him. And he would wait for me to turn around, and he knew he wouldn't rush me. He would just sit there and wait because he knew I'd come to him. And if for whatever reason, there were times he would just hook me right in and drop me. There are other times if I went a little bit longer, he'd give me a boot and then do it. And it was just so easy. And Chris was one of those guys. And there were a few others that were like that, but obviously Chris, for obvious reasons, is at the top of the list, but Steve is another one that just I don't think people talk about enough.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt Angle even thanked him. I remember in the Hall of Fame speech years ago, and he was a guy who was a world champion down there in Memphis. And usually, from what I recalled, that guys like him were like you were getting the call. I mean, I don't know what happened.
Well, it's funny because, like I said, we were working in Memphis together, and he was the heavyweight champ, and then we were up doing dart matches every Monday, Tuesday, and we were doing them together. Every now and then they'd separate us. Sometimes they put us in tag, but it's usually me and Steve working each other. And I remember we were in Las Vegas, and he said, "Man," he goes, Stephanie McMahon came up to him and was like, "Hey, they're going to put me in this gimmick." I can't remember exactly what it was, but I thought it kind of fit his mofo gimmick that he was doing in Memphis. I don't know. A lot of people remember that he kind of did the whole bandana thing back reverse, where it tied up in the front, and it was it's kind of like not a gangster, but just kind of just a just a thuggish kind of guy.
I remember. I know exactly what it is. I remember it.
Yeah, and he was talking about how they were going to do something and wanted to move in that direction. I was like, man, that's awesome. And for whatever reason, it never came to fruition. I don't know why.
Yeah, I just looked at his ability, and then obviously you, and that just it should have been, certainly different. But just Canyon to me was just one of those guys for his size, what he could do. I mean, he was just one of those guys I used to love watching out there in the ring, especially in WCW. I was wondering about this because I haven't had anybody, or at least I've seen ask this question. What were the differences? You were in that locker room in WCW, in the peak of WCW. Then you're in WWF. You're there. What were the differences between those two locker rooms?
I'll go Office, and then I'll go the Boys.
Okay.
Office, super professional in WWE. WCW, it was like, I mean, it was like the blind leading the blind at times, how it felt.
I read the book, The Death of WCW, so
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I mean, even like when the Flock split up, how they did my time off of TV, how I was off, and then Diamond Dallas Page is calling me a week later on Monday at like 2:00 in the afternoon, going, "Where are you getting to the building soon?" And I'm like, "No, man, I'm in Atlanta." And he goes, "Well, we got a match tonight." And I'm like, "Well, they told me I was off of TV. I went to the office. I went to Annette. I went to Craig, all these people that were the ups that I was supposed to talk to, and said I was off." So it's like the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. I would go and ask for a flight. I was like, "Oh, I need to change a flight. I'm not from Sacramento. Instead of flying to Atlanta, I need to fly to Savannah, Georgia." And it was like, "Well, you're supposed to be flying into Savannah. I don't know if we can do that." WWE would be like, "Where are you going?" Like, it was like so easy. I could go to them and say I need to change something, and it'd get changed. Right. Very easy on the cars and the hotels and setting things up and helping in that manner. And even though, like I said, nothing happened with me professionally in terms of having a character and getting it pushed out there, it was still so much more professional than WCW was. Now the Boys. For me, it was rough in WCW coming in because I didn't know anybody other than I had a small group. I was friends with Chris Canyon, Kidman, Glacier, Ray Lloyd, and Wrath, Brian Clark, and another guy, Luther Wilson, who was he was the coach with Ray Lloyd.
Oh yeah. I remember.
Yeah. I think he was the original Big Sexy.
Yes, you know what?
Because he did a Saturday night before Nash and Hall came in. Yep. He did with this pink and black leopard print deal, and he had the big Sexy on it.
Well, that's why the next week later he didn't do it because Nash and Hall came in.
Exactly. But I knew those guys, and I'd been to some WCW shows, meeting guys in passing and stuff.
And you were a football player, so you definitely knew your way around. So you know the deal.
Yeah, and I wasn't worried about that. I just didn't know my way around the professional wrestling locker room because it's way different. And when I came in, I had gotten me friends, and I was friends with Reese even before the flock. So Big Ron,
Who
we
was
were
Yeti,
friends,
by
and
the
then
way, famously? Who was Yeti? That was
the
before.
Yeti,
Yep.
yeah, and we were friends. So it's like he introduced me to Scott Norton, and
Oh,
Scott Norton and I
love
became really
Scott
good.
Norton. He was
Yeah,
just what a talent.
yeah, he and I became really good friends, and he was friends with Brian Adams,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so the three of us became tight. We all traveled together. And this was right at the
The
start of the
toughest guys
flock.
in all of wrestling.
Huh?
Scott Norton, right? The toughest guys in all of wrestling. Scott Norton, Brian Adams.
Yeah, and Brian was cool. And unbeknownst to me at the time, Brian Adams was really good friends with the Undertaker and a lot of the guys in
and he became
WWF.
Randy Savage's bodyguard when Randy Savage was doing the rap thing. You remember hearing about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, they were both good guys, and we hung out while I was traveling with them, and guys couldn't figure out why they were traveling with me. And it was a lot of kind of like what's the deal? Why are you with this young guy? Does he know somebody? Now I'm only telling this because Scott Norton told me this like later, because I had heat with Sting, Lex, the Steiners, Bagwell, and I had no idea I had heat because I came in and I mean I was pretty quiet. It wasn't, I'd say hey to everybody, but
Right.
I kind of found my own little space. I did my thing. It was almost like a respect thing for me, like how I felt it was, how I was doing it. But to them, it was kind of like they didn't quite have the same feeling. And of course, here's this 24-year-old guy, never had any wrestling, nothing under his belt at all, right into this TV spot. And Rave was getting a pretty good spot, right from the jump. So yeah, I had heat with those guys, and Norton was like telling me, yeah, they were asking like, does he got money? Does he know somebody? Like they were like going, why are you vets traveling with this young guy?
Right.
And Norton and them were just like, no, he's a cool guy. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, we get along, he's a good guy, kind of thing. And the locker room was more, not everybody, but some guys, it was you felt a definite like separation.
Yeah.
In terms of where you were at on the card, guys, and there now the people I hung around with, everybody was great. There were, most all the flock. And then there was a couple other guys like X-Pac was really cool with me. We talked a lot in WCW. And then when I left and went up to WWE, he was like, come here, bro, give me a hug, and like that kind of guy. And it's not like we hung out a ton outside of wrestling, but he was just really cool like that. Just a really good guy. So I mean, you had your exceptions, but you definitely felt a difference. And then when I went to WWE, I have felt more of an intimidation going into that locker room than the WCW locker room.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm sure part of it was just being a brand new guy. Like, even though I was a brand new
WCW stigma that you were a guy in WCW, we know the war between WCW and WWE. No, wasn't that?
No, I never had that. I know a lot of guys, especially when after they bought, the company.
Was a big example of that. I mean, they just
a lot of guys. No, they never treated me. The only thing I didn't know, the only thing, and I had to get smart up to a lot of stuff. Because in WCW, if we weren't on the card that night where there was TV, obviously TV, we would leave like before the show. If we got there and we weren't on the card, I mean, guys could leave, so we would bolt out. And so I started doing the same thing when I first got to WWE. I wrestled my dart match, I was done, and I would leave. And I was doing that for a while, and then Michael Hayes came up to me and smarted me up and was like, "Hey, man, I know WCW, and it's a big difference in how they do things there and how we do things here." But he was like, Vince and everybody likes for everybody to stick around after the matches and stay till the end, which I had no idea. So, there were certain adjustments, but meeting some guys, everybody's really cool. I didn't have any issues with anybody. in the back, and I didn't feel like I was a WCW guy. I think it might have been different had I been up there a little bit, although
Right.
Jericho came in pretty smooth.
I know Jericho came in. It was like I never forget with the countdown clock. He had maybe the greatest,
Dude, that was the most awesome. Yeah, that was.
I know.
You couldn't have with the millennia coming on and people worried about the world ending after
I
going
gotta
into
make you laugh.
2000.
My dad worked on Wall Street, and I never forget. Every day, it was like he was actually one of the. You should be shocked to hear this. He was one of the people that worked on trying to avoid everything being set back because of 2000. People were, I never forget as a kid, every day, like my dad was actually one of those people that worked on, trying to make sure all our records wouldn't be forgotten. And it was crazy. Yeah. And Jericho, I mean, they shot him right to the moon. Right to the moon.
Yeah, right to the moon, and same thing with the Radicals.
Yes.
None of those guys. Now they had to prove themselves because Vince on with Perry and Guerrero and Chris and
Malenko.
It was a size thing.
Yeah,
and Vince was huge on being a big guy.
Yep.
But I mean, all of them proved him wrong, and obviously Guerrero and Benoit did.
Yeah, Eddie and Benoit by far were the two.
Eddie's character. That the Latino Heat, man, is one of my favorite.
I used to love with the
Latino
LWO. I did that. I used to
love
with the LWO.
That was really, I think, he planted the seed, and then in WCW with the Latino Heat or the LWO,
Yep.
and I think that manifested. And it took a bit, but when he got there and really got into that groove, it was unbelievable. I mean, cheap lie still, I mean, awesome.
Yeah, he was just, but he had the charisma. Yeah, and Benoit, is a guy that, you probably had one of the best matches of your career with, and I know obviously what happened, but, what was it like wrestling Chris Benoit?
Like I've said before, it was one of my best matches. One of my top matches. It would have been awesome had we had more time. But I love the way Chris worked. I like the snug, tight work. I mean, it was rough afterwards. You knew it. I mean, I had his handprint on my chest for about a week.
I remember when he would go like that, and they looked like they hurt.
The chops were. I had blood after the match. Just it rises to the surface, and just started. I mean, he would lay him in there, but I don't mind that. It doesn't hurt you, and when you're in the moment, you're not feeling it.
And that was the guy, by the way. You'll know this. Bret Hart, when he came back after Owen died, the person that he wanted to have his first match back with after Owen's death was Chris Benoit.
Yeah, and Chris was so gracious with me. I mean, being this young, unknown guy and giving me the opportunity to go, hey, what's your thoughts on the match? What do you want to do? And, at his position, he didn't have to do that. There's some guys that would be just like, here's what we're doing, and he was really great in that. The opening of that match, I came up with, and he loved it and was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, it didn't bother him that, as a green guy, I just said, hey, I think it'd be cool. You're supposed to work Raven. He's going to switch me because of Raven's rules. I said, I'll just charge and you just light me up with chops, and I'll chop, bump. And then we went into whatever we went in, and we had a couple of the spots in there. And I said, I can do, my springboard stuff. And I usually just really did like springboard drop kicks. And we threw in I did the in-ring springboard back elbow. But I'd never done like the springboard leg drop. And he was like, this is how he thinks. He goes, I know you did a springboard drop kick and we'll have this in this match. He goes, you want to miss with a springboard leg drop? And I was like, yeah, like for sure, man. Like, yeah. I mean, that match was the only match I've done where I've had 3 springboards in one match.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because usually your matches in WCW, it was like you get the elbow off the rope, maybe you get another move, you get something else, and then it was like, okay, they're gonna just go to the finish. But that one, you had something there. You had something there a bit. That was a
Yeah, and it was cool. Like that match was really organic. A lot of that stuff when we rolled out of the ring and falling on top of each other and fighting and him getting distracted, that was all just improv right there, just kind of going with the flow of the match because we hadn't caught any of that. It was that's him being as professional as he is with Lodi standing there holding up a sign and see, that's what people don't realize. It's like, people, they want to bash, workers or guys doing stuff young. It's like, you have to recognize that Chris is giving you an opportunity. You can't stand there. He's getting distracted by somebody. I'm going to go get him in the back. And he's professional enough to expect that, to know and go, hey, and he was setting me up and as what he should have done. Because, we rolled out, I'd been on top. He had been on top. I think we rolled out and fell, and he fell on top of me and just started lighting me up. And then he got up and saw Lodi and went to him. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity. So I just run up and for him and from behind. And then we went in, and that's where I called the leg drop at that point. Because I think that's where I think I got on him there and rolled him in. And I said, hey, leg drop or something, or I think I rolled in and then when I slammed him and leg drop, something like that. But he was just really good like that. And it's easy to work with guys like that set you up. It's like when you see an opportunity, find it. Right. It's like I would tell guys, like, if you're going to jump off the top rope, I'm telling you right now, if I turn around and I'm standing there for more than 3 seconds, 5 seconds, I'm olaying you. And I said, you better time yourself because I'm going to, I always tell guys, I'm like, if you're going off the top rope, time it because I'm going to be watching where you're at. I'm going to be selling and I'm going to turn and I want you to start jumping before I even face you.
Yeah.
It
makes sense.
And Chris was one of those, you didn't have to say that to Chris. Like Chris just knew. He was one of those guys that just knew.
He had that instinct. He had that. He was almost like Magic Johnson passing the ball. He's going to pass it to you. You better make sure you shoot and get ready. So you're in position. Yeah, he was definitely. I used to love his matches with Booker T, the best out of 7. I mean, I used to love watching Chris Benoit. He was just one of those guys. He didn't need to talk. He didn't need to cut a promo because he just go out there and his wrestling soul. That's why he was so great. Obviously, we know things happen with what they were. I wanted to ask you this question: is there one or two moments in your career that stand out most?
In terms of
whatever you've done in wrestling, one or two moments, anything you've done, WCW, post WCW. I mean, I have a couple thoughts. I mean, I'd be curious what you think because, it's you're sick boy and I'm not.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, besides matches, obviously the Benoit match. I want to say when I had a match with Steve McMichael.
Yes, Mongo McMichael.
We had actually worked a lot together, and it was one match. It was a live. It was Nitro.
Yes, October '98, if I'm not mistaken, right around there.
Could have been because we did a few of those Thunders.
Spring. I think he did one in the spring and then one late '98 because they were. It was late '98. The October one. It was October one in the spring.
Yeah, and I was riding with Brian Adams at the time, and Brian wasn't working that night. Neither was I, and we were at the front of production, right where the gorilla position would be, and things like that. We were ready to leave. We had our bags sitting there, and they were like 10, 15 minutes from going live, and Arn Anderson came up, and he was just like, hey kid, I hate to do this to you, but you and Mongo have been at it, and you're. I think it was like second segment. I think there was like a Bret Hart interview, and then there was like commercial, or there was something there, and then we were next. We were either second or third. We had like no time to get ready, and I just remember Mongo coming up, just looking like white as a ghost, going like, "What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?" And he had already been in the business, been working, had more experience than I did. And I told him, I said, "Look, let's just get ready." We didn't even have time to stretch. I said, "We just get dressed." And so we're sitting there getting dressed, and he was like, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" I said, "We're just going to call it in the ring." And he was like, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, we don't have time to do anything. We're just going to call it in the ring." And I said, look, I said, how about this? I said, at the beginning of the match, Lodi will distract you, grab your foot, and then I'll come and jump you from behind and get heat on you.
I remember
And then
that.
we'll go from there. And I said, the finish, I said, when we're ready to go home, I go slam me or hit a big move on me and then give me your football tackle. Go to slam me or suplex me. I'll drop behind you, duck my punch, boot me, and then put me in your finish. It was something like that.
Yes, I remember the football tackle right before the finish. I do remember the football tackle.
Yeah, it was something along those lines. And I said, that's all we're going to call. And actually, it was to me, it was one of the best matches that we had, just because, again, it became more organic. And I think it was the match where we were on our knees, just slugging each other back and forth, fighting. And I just remember, this sticks in my mind, Tony Schiavone going, like, this is what WCW is all about. These guys are fighting for, and it's like, because we're sitting there on their knees just clobbering each other. And none of this was called. And that's where I think he kind of was like more free and not so much in constraints of having to, here's what you follow, because he didn't seem as rigid. And I felt like that in other matches.
Yeah, they were pushing when you had the match, if I recall correctly. This is just me remembering it. They were pushing the fact that he wanted to reform the Horsemen. So they were trying to basically emphasize how big it was for him to get this victory in the Horsemen. So they were kind of pushing that.
Because they had, even because we had done, I think the first couple matches we've done, he was still a Horseman, or they had just split. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was
split. They had just split.
Yeah.
And he was still getting that push and still trying to do the Horseman thing. So, but that one, that sticks out in my career in terms of just being like one where it was like, hey, I went out on live TV with Mongo, and I felt like, okay, leading a match, and usually Hills lead the match.
Right.
But most of the time, it's more the vet that leads it, and he was the vet in this, and just calling it in the ring, and I was like, it's that, I felt good about that I was able to go out and do that, and I think I kept him calm.
And a Super Bowl champion, by the way, in a Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Also.
and I like, at times it was rough working with him, because sometimes the dude, he was so strong, and he would just do stuff like, sometimes I'd shoot. I remember one match I went to shoot him off the ropes, and I said, watch my clothesline, and he just reversed me and slugged me in the ropes so hard. Yeah, I just held on because I didn't know what was coming. So I was like, I'm going to hold on because I have no idea what he's going to do. And when he would grab you up for that tombstone, and see, that went into another one of my thought process on the pedigree. I'm like, he's doing the tombstone. It's okay to do the pedigree, somebody else's move. But again, I wasn't a Super Bowl champion or Steve Mongo or Michael.
Super Bowl champion with the 85 Bears, and he had, a lot of friends. And
so again, I think that nativity floated to the top on me on that. And but I mean, he would just snatch you, and it was like I was a baby.
Yeah, well, he had to listen. I mean, you were a big guy too, but he definitely had things that, for me, I'll give you a couple bonus ones before I come back to a few other things. You have actually a victory. A lot of people don't realize. I watched a match of yours against Gangrel. You beat Gangrel way after your WCW WWF run, and you beat a guy who was coming into the WWF who I've interviewed in Rhino. I think those are actually, win-wise, probably two of your biggest wins of your entire career.
Well,
Gangrel, the Brood, and Rhino, the last ECW champion who I interviewed. And those are actually, two of
it's funny because Ryan and I joked about that, because he goes, actually, you're like the unofficial ECW champion, because I think he hadn't given up the belt
after he had left because the company had folded, and he was
he still was the champ. So it was like, he goes, kind of this you're the pseudo champ thing. Now we kind of joked about it. But yeah, no, when I had a lot of those dark matches. I mean, I was working like, I would work like local guys, but I'd also work, like, I worked Midian. They were putting me over Midian. Yeah. I did with one of the headbangers. We worked a dark match. I worked a dark match with
Thrasher, I think it was, right? Thrasher.
Mosh. Didn't Mosh do the old
with D'Lo
Leave It to Beaver thing?
Yeah.
Was it Mosh? I work with Mosh now. I work with Thrash in MCW.
Yes, that I knew. That I remember seeing.
Yeah. But they were putting me in there. I mean, I worked D-Lo in dark matches. I worked quite a few guys, and I was getting wins over some of them. And they were, like I said, they were really pushing me, and I felt confident because I would, writers would come up and would go, "Oh, we have an idea," and we would go, and when we take it to Vince, and Vince would go, "Oh, I don't want to do it with him. Like, just hold off." Like, and it wasn't in a bad way. He was like, because there were times, I was supposed to do one of the agents had come and got me after a match to go do a security guard for Taker and Austin when they were in their feud.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Yes.
And they had me in the come. He goes, "Hey, can you come do the security guard thing?" I'm like, "Okay." And I'm standing there and I'm listening to what's going to happen, and I see Vince and Shane talking, and they're looking at me. And Shane comes up and goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I think it was Tony Guerrera." I said, "Tony Guerrera told me that I need to be a part of this security guard." And he goes, No, you're not doing this. We're not using you on this. We don't want to like expose you like this." And he goes, "You're done." So he called Tony over and he goes, "Scott's out of this. Like, he's not doing this." So, there were signs. It's like, that I was seeing, like, they looked at me in a certain way, but I think where it really kind of went crazy is when they bought WCW. I think that's where I kind of got on the back burner. And then, I did have some stuff going on in my personal life that was affecting me, in just terms of what I was going on with my family, with my mom, that stuff, and my dad and a younger brother and stuff. So I know that was a mental distraction for me, and I wasn't always probably at the top of where I needed to be.
I think it was a bad thing in the long run for wrestling when the WWF.
Absolutely, it was. I have always said, and it's crazy because Vince had a meeting at the Gund Arena in Cleveland.
Yep.
Or no, it might have been Columbus, Ohio, at the it was where the soccer team, this professional soccer team plays.
Yeah.
That Columbus has in Ohio, and he called a meeting and confirmed the rumors and just was like, "Hey, nothing's going to change." Like, he called all the boys, everybody in this huge meeting, because that's the night Shane showed up.
Yep,
at Nitro in Panama City. And he goes, "Nothing's going to change." He goes, "They're going to have their own show, their own time." Now, we didn't know it was going to be put over as Shane bought the company. He just said nothing was going to change. He goes, "Obviously, talent will flip-flop." But he said Raw and SmackDown are going to have their own days. Nitro, Thunder, like, it's pretty much going to be the same. And I'm going, this is going to be really good. Because now I'm thinking, because I was always as a kid going, man, they need to have one spectacular pay-per-view where it's WCW champion versus WWF champion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And winner holds the belt to like maybe the next big pay-per-view.
Right.
Like, you could drop it on a house show because they do that all the time, and then get it back. But it would be the build-up, I just thought it'd be really cool. Or just or do them completely separate, It just took away from the boys, and it's always good to have competition. Every night in WCW, we were always, what's Raw doing? It was always like, what's happening in Raw? And then same thing. When I left and went to WWE, it was the same thing. What's Nitro doing? And it was just a bigger platform for the boys, and Vince just monopolized it and took that opportunity and shrunk it down. And now guys are going, where do you have the opportunity for guys to, to work at a major promotion? You don't. You had to go overseas.
Yeah, it was Japan. TNA came in later, and they tried.
It was later, but it wasn't the same.
No,
in terms of being WC. And I'm like, that's competition is healthy. I know. Look, you won. You bought them for pennies on the dollar. You own it. Let Shane run it as do it. And I thought they should have carried that storyline out where it's like he did like his father did.
But then what? Raven talked about it when he was here 2 weeks ago. He hated the Alliance. That was where he stopped watching wrestling. He said here that he stopped watching wrestling. Yeah. He was a part of it because the Alliance thing was terrible. I got to be honest with you. Yeah. The Alliance thing was so
it was so I didn't understand it. I'm kind of sitting there and not to put my
Metallica cut their hair after the blackout. Yeah. Like, the Alliance angle was the same thing. Okay, we have this.
Okay, well, here's a cool music thing on that. That was on a bet.
I did hear about that. Yeah, I did hear about that. I did hear about
It
that.
was
Yeah.
with Alice in Chains, because in
Yes,
Alice in Chains, when they're doing the
yes, I
acoustic
remember that.
set, Mike Starr's playing the bass that says "Friends don't let friends give haircuts."
Yes, that was on Unplugged. I do remember that because as a kid, my
And
dad was a drummer and my mom sings, and I remember watching that, and I was like, "What?" And I
yeah,
watched that.
that was all kind of tied in together
Yeah,
there. But yeah, I'm sitting there not to put myself over, but I'm going, okay, if you're going to do a WCW invasion, maybe use me, or there's already guys here as like this secret, like somebody that's been planted.
yeah. It was just
Like, and see, I thought I would have been good because nobody's seen, Jericho had already popped off, Radicals had popped off. I haven't been on TV. I've been off
no,
TV. I would have
no.
been the perfect saboteur, to come in and like, how are these guys getting in here? WCW guys are coming in and maybe ganking guys and then bolting, and it's like, how's this happening? Like that to me, and
Yeah,
see, this is,
it was this the way they even brought Booker T
it,
and DDP
yeah.
in. It was
And
just
even if they didn't do it with me, I'm just saying, because I was there and it would have made sense.
yeah.
It would have been great to go and, like I left the door open, like, and these guys snuck in and they're bum rushing somebody and then they
I just
leave.
think that it was done. Vince was doing this to settle a score. Basically,
He
the guy.
was.
It was just to me.
It's
It was.
ego, man.
Yeah.
It's that big dick energy ego guy
Yeah.
that,
It wasn't.
especially that Vince has, where he's like, I'm going to crush them completely. And he made some examples of guys.
He did.
And I think Booker T could have been an example, but Booker T rose up and did what he
He had
had
too
to
much
do.
talent. Booker T had too much talent. It was too much.
Way too much talent.
He
But
was
but
tested.
had he kind of let it get in his head, I think he could have,
He
had
would
it
have went the
affected
way of
him.
DDP and the way of Buff Bagwell, but he didn't because Booker T. There was something about the Radicals. You brought up certainly Guerrero.
Listen, just Harlem Heat's music. I still
Oh,
sit there when that comes out. That's one of my favorite interest music. Me
all
and
right, you
Kevin
want to
used to
laugh? You
pop
want to laugh? When I used to play WCW NWO Thunder, I used to just play Booker T
that
for that.
music.
I used to get so
Uh,
far. I would love. He had my hair on my
yeah.
neck stand because I loved Booker T out there. Booker
Well,
T
that
just
little
yes, yeah. I was just up
all
there.
of it was hot.
Yeah,
Well,
he
like
was.
me and Kidman would sit there, we would mark out, and when we would be sitting ringside before they
Yep.
took us off from doing that, and I would be sitting on the floor, and I'd get a kick in the butt when Harlem Heat would come out because that music would start, and it's like hard not to sit there and want to be like,
And I loved when he had the thing on his nose. He come out
the breeze, yeah,
oh man, that was the Booker T. I know he grew out the hair, but that was the Booker T. Like he just got me fired up. I mean, I looked forward to you guys every Nitro in school. I would count down in my head. It was to Nitro. I was so pumped.
yeah.
It was
We
great
look
time.
forward to that. Now we wanted to bomb it from the NWO music, from hearing it. I mean,
Well,
five, six
what?
times,
It was
8 times
overexposed.
a night.
I know it was over. Yeah, like half the roster was NWO. It was just to me, unfortunately, that's the problem that WCW ran into. And then a guy you wrestled Goldberg, they shot him to the moon, but to me, it was like what is your thoughts on Goldberg then these days and how his career ended and what happened after you wrestled him a couple times.
I enjoyed working with Bill just because he was so over. Like, again, we were both really green in that stuff, but I didn't try to do anything with him that was out of his realm of his capabilities. Just he's a pounder and grounder.
You slipped in the first match you had with him. You were about to get the cover, and then you were going to do it off the top rope. And
Yes, which I still that and going back to the question you asked me earlier about any moments, even though that was a low moment, it's still one of those because I was like just stunned that Terry goes, "Hey, hit your," because Terry Tether was a big fan of mine and liked my work in WCW and really tried to get me more wins, and some of them got shot down from certain people. But he goes, "I want you to hit him with your springboard drop kick and cover him," because I don't think Bill had really been covered. At that point. No one had gotten like a legit cover on him, and I was like super stoked. But all the guys with the baby oil and the hot stuff that they sprayed on them, the damn ropes would get so slick because it's not like I missed the rope. I hit. My foot just slipped as I went to spring off. But I enjoyed working with Bill. I wish they would have done him better in terms of like I've said this maybe one other time, um, that I felt like they should have, you build somebody up so high, they've got to crash. And I think what would have been great for him was somebody like a Norton. I think Scott Norton should have destroyed him, to beat him within an inch of his life where he wanted to quit the business.
And Norton was believable.
And he was believable. Oh, yeah, he was believable. And you have somebody just absolutely eat. Now, they could have set him up a little bit, where he's had some rough, however they wanted to do it. But just
remember the one match he had with Regal? I mean, Regal.
Oh, where Regal, stretched him out and worked him over. Yeah. But it's like, I'm talking about just utter destruction, where it's like when Rocky got destroyed by Clubber Lang.
Yeah,
in Rocky 3. But a big part of it, his psyche was messed up because his trainer died, but he also took the beating in the ring, and now he's like lost the eye of the tiger. I thought Goldberg needed to do that at some point, and then have him have this huge comeback.
Stupid. Yeah, the finish with Nash was dumb. Bam Bam Bigelow runs in, Hall runs in with the taser. Yeah. Was just.
They should have done it like that. To me, again, I'm nobody in terms of laying out this stuff. Obviously, there were a lot smarter guys than me, because WCW went on to be very successful. But I was like, build him up, and this is just basic old school psychology, where it's like, you got this guy that's hot, that he's so hot and on this streak. What else can you do with him? To me, it's beat him within an inch of his life, where he wants to quit the business.
Everybody up to, they were putting everybody in the roster, even with the flock. To me, I thought the flock was never the same after what Goldberg did to all you guys. They put him in there with DDP. Okay, DDP was there, but like, what do you do there? They put him with everybody humanly possible. I mean, and it was all done. The win with Hogan was for a ratings thing, but to me, like the way
with us.
Yeah, it was just stupid.
It was, first of all, none of us had any real believability, except for it was Raven and Perry were the only ones that had believability. Had they built us more, I think it would have meant more having to run through the flock to get to Raven.
Yeah, exactly.
Had they built us more, built us up a little bit, even if they only picked a couple guys, that are going to really maybe give Bill a little bit of a,
but they didn't do that. They didn't make.
They didn't.
Even after he lost the match, he had to. He has the rematch with Nash. Then he gets injured with the stupid thing. Remember when he pulled his car out of the limo and with the whole.
Punched the. I'm like.
That was the dumbest thing ever. I mean, the guy just unfortunately.
Why do that? Bill's over. He doesn't need to punch through a window.
And what was the point of the point? Then the whole thing with Brett. I mean, listen, Brett obviously has plenty of things to say about it, but even the Steiner went through him, and listen, it was what it was. I know I only got a few more minutes, but I want to give you something, because I know you say who you are, you're not anybody, but I think you're somebody, because I want to give you this, because to share my screen, you are now in my Hall of Fame. I have a Hall of Fame, and I want to make you a Hall of Famer, because of you are a Hall of Fame. Listen, and you should feel good about this. I have David Ellefson of Megadeth, who I just put in my Hall of Fame, Mark Farner of Grand Funk Railroad, Savio Vega, a bunch of other names in the rock world, and and I wanted to give you this before we go soon, and I want to thank you for all that you do for our sport.
That's awesome.
For everything. Yeah, you deserve it. I'll give you the physical copy when we're off the air, and we'll certainly go with that. I know these days you've done a lot of motivational speaking. Tell me how you got involved in that.
I started that early. I haven't done that lately, but that was the early thing that I did in my career. I mean, that started with football for me in high school, and going and talking to kids, and we go to like Shriners hospitals and see kids, and I think that was.
I was in religion class as a kid. There was this. His name was Tony. And I was trying to come up with his last name when I was in religion class, and he was like trying to motivate us. We were in the in the 7th grade, and growing up. It was like, and I was like, okay, well, this is my motivational speaker in religion class all these years later, which was what you were, a motivational speaker.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I can put that moniker on there for sure. I just know I had an opportunity to go talk to high school kids and things like that, because I just been through a lot in my career. There's a lot of stuff that I went through, a lot of obstacles I had to overcome and do, and it was just something that I was kind of passionate about, and I felt like, like I said, going to some of these Shriners hospitals as like in a high school and college, and seeing these kids where it's like, they're hurting and they got these real serious diseases, and it's like I didn't even have to talk. You just walk in the room, and it's like they necessarily didn't know who you were. they just knew you were a football player or whatever. And they were just like, this smile came on their face. And it was super cool seeing that. And it's like, it kind of put things in perspective for me going, hey, quit crying and complaining about having to go practice or work out or do this or that. These kids would absolutely kill to be able to get out of to go do what I do every day. And, we can get very complacent in our life and take things for granted. And I was just like, when I had the opportunity, especially some things I'd gone through in my life, building up to wrestling and getting there, I was like, just it's about living your dream. Like when I left football, my family and a lot of my friends were like, you're crazy. Like, what are you going to give? There's no guarantee you're going to do this. But I just was like, this now. It was never necessarily a dream early on to be in professional wrestling, but it became that. And I knew that's where I wanted to go. And I was like, you're not going to tell me I can't do it. So, my biggest thing was like, telling kids, like, don't let anybody tell you can't. Because I've had people throughout my life tell me, oh, you can't go to college. You don't have the grades for it. You need to go learn how to retread tires. I'm not kidding you. My guidance counselor in high school told me that, and I was like a 3.4 grade average my freshman year in college. And I'm not boasting about anything because I'm not the smartest or sharpest knife in the drawer. But
I was in college, and I didn't get to 3.4 right away.
So I knew how to study. I knew how to study. I knew, and it was like, I can do this. So it's like, so through all these experiences, I was just like going to take that on and go, don't let anybody tell you whatever your dream is. Go for it. If you don't take the shot, you'll never make it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, listen.
So it was just kind of like that. And that was really my thing. And that was really early on. And then I did stuff later. And within the last 15 years or 10 years or so, I haven't been back there. I was just like, I kind of was just wanting to not completely disappear, but I just wanted this quiet thing. Not that I was ever in the middle of a whole lot of stuff, but I was just like, I was never interested. Like I said, I'd never been on social media before up until like, it's probably now going on 5-6 months now. But that was the first time I'd done any type of social media. And it just wasn't a priority for me in those terms, but I kept having people going, you should go. There's lots
people
of things.
Love to hear from you. You had such, an interesting career and journey.
And for me, another thing that really sparked me, I started hearing stuff on the Katie Vick stuff.
Yeah,
and,
I remember that.
And when I was hearing that, I was like, there's that part of me that's like, I want people to hear my side of it. Like in terms of like, hey, you've heard it from The Office and what their version is, but hear it from the guy that The Office called and talked to and told me about this story. I was just reading. That's one of the things with social media. You're reading all the Monday morning quarterbacks sitting there talking about this, talking about that and wrestling and what guys are junk and they're this and they're that, they're jobbers. And then it's like, dude, you got no idea, So, there was a little prompt in that too. And just going, I wanted to set I saw it as opportunity, a platform to kind of set the record straight on that. And it's like, two, I'm getting up there. I'm sitting here at 52, and it's like, if I'm going to do anything, should come out. And there is a story there to tell, just even how I got into wrestling, my whole career from WCW and getting paid by both companies. And there's a lot of stuff.
Do you want to write a book? Do you want to write a book?
No, I don't know if anybody's got interest in writing books.
I just had on Pitbull Gary Wolf, and he wrote one. I mean, I was putting it out there. I mean, you have a lot.
Hey, well, listen, if somebody came to me and said, can we write a book for you? Tell us. I wouldn't be like, no, can't do that. But I'm not sitting there going, yeah, I want to write a book on anything.
I do know a lot of people, especially in the rock world. I will do my best. I mean, I can't guarantee, but no, I mean, yeah, the Katie Vick thing, I that was one of those things, and you didn't get to tell your side of the story.
Yeah, and that was a big part. Like I just was hearing stuff from Bruce Pritchard, and then I was hearing stuff that Tommy Dreamer had said, which was
I heard about that.
Yeah, not anything bad by Dreamer. The thing was more Bruce, his version of it. I was like, that's not exactly right. Like, don't use me as a scapegoat on this horrible, most infamous storyline in wrestling history. Don't throw that on my back, you know? So yeah, that all, you know, these kind of things kind of prompted it. And I was like, you know, come out, and people were just like, you should come out. You know, there's things that are advantageous for you with it, you know, as well. So go and do it. So that kind of spurred me on.
Yeah, that Katie Vick storyline, I remember that. It was just, you know, unfortunate. I would have loved to have seen you, you know, been a part of the main event though in WrestleMania. I would have loved to have, you know, for
Well, I
your
wish
sake.
I had known. That's one of my, when you talk about things, going back to what you asked me earlier, not, it's monumental in the fact it might be negative, but it still sticks out because I'm like, you know, it just still just sits in my craw. Like, why wouldn't you contact me if I'm going to be a feature match with Hunter? Because that's what
Yeah.
Tommy Dreamer said in his interview.
Yep. I heard about
And yeah, how come you wouldn't contact me? Like, I had no idea for a month or a couple months or however long that story. I hadn't heard from them at all. So it was amazing. And like I said, I was out of shape. I had been working out. I had a lot of other things going on in my life at the time. And so, yeah, I'm like, yeah, isn't it kind of important to let somebody know you're thinking about, you know, I mean, you were using my last name, which I thought was super bizarre. Like because I didn't watch wrestling, you know, I would peep in and see what was going on, but I was like, they're using my, you know, my name, my last name. Now, there's lots of last names, but it was just ironic because I, you know, was still fresh with the company.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know anything about this. And yeah, and then at the last minute, it's like, oh, we're going to stick you in here kind of thing. And I'm like, this is what you're going to strap me with.
But that was unfortunately, you know, as we have a few more minutes with the legendary Sick Boy, of course. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also follow Sick Boy on Instagram and check him out on Facebook. But yeah, I feel like that's, to me, when I look back at the WWF side of things, was that you were on the roster. It was like a AAA player getting called to the big leagues.
Yeah.
And you didn't get to play. You were on the roster, you were on the team, but they didn't let you play. It just bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, they signed, like a lot of people, I'll read stuff, they go, oh, they signed him to a developmental contract and went to the developmental. I'm like, no.
You didn't do that. I know. You were there.
I flew to Stanford and met with Bruce Pritchard and JR, and we worked out a booking contract. And it was, like I said, at the time, I didn't know they wanted to introduce me with Val Venus because we didn't talk about character. We just talked about money and doing a contract. And we did a contract, and it was only later that they talked about the Val Venus. But yeah, it was a booking contract, and they were wanting to go kind of right out of the gate because they knew I could work. I mean, I had heard from,
you're right. Your look was good.
Well, I had heard from Lodi, who was friends with the Hardys, from JR, that JR was impressed with my abilities, and I was a young guy, and you know, had a good look, because I think JR wrote something that, you know, I had the look, the athleticism,
well, if
the
you
charisma.
Remember, I don't know if you knew about this or not, but at the time when they had the WWF magazine, they were trying to basically find like new members of Degeneration X. This was they did it years ago, when this was, you know, they had the magazine, and they had the Hardys name because of the look. And your look at that time when you were in WCW going into the WWF, you would have fitted perfectly in that article because they were looking for different members, different things. They threw the Hardys, they had the look, and you kind of had in that range of that look. You were with a little bit of a taller, you know, side of what you are height wise. It would have made a lot of sense. Yeah,
and I had transitioned out of that kind of that because I was wearing the flannel T-shirt a lot.
I remember that, yeah,
and even around my waist. And then I got rid of that, and I used the it was a big clubbing shirt back in the day. It was like that spandex, really tight, you know. And I'd cut the sleeves off of it and things like that. And then the Hardys kind of adopted that look too. You know, that was their. They were we were very, very similar in that, but I just remember hearing positive things from everybody, and it always seemed very positive in the direction we were going. But they said it's like I got right up, almost like, oh, we're bringing you up to the major leagues, and I get in the locker room, and then it's like they go, we're not going to work. You're not going to play today.
I was friends with a guy that had that same scenario with the Phillies, and you know, he was AAA year. He was good. He, you know, had great number like you, great everything, and then, you know, they brought him up, and then
well, it's just like, give me something. I mean, considering some of the crappy gimmicks you've put guys in, give me something. Like, because see, I'm better
Well, you
at
worked
you.
Just Joe, and they had him as the stupid. What were they using with the news? It was like pre-Wade Barrett. He worked Just Joe. They brought him up for a little while, and they had him on the Sunday Night Heats, and he was like,
Yeah, the Joey Legend thing. I was like,
"Yeah, stupid." It was just
yeah, and it's like, okay, well, I get, because I'm not kidding you. I can't tell you how many times we had events and Vince was just like, I don't want to use him on this. Like, it just doesn't fit
But that
for
was
him.
Raven's frustration when he was here too. He talked, vehemently, and he talked about this in the documentary before we go about just the frustration on not being used and such. Now, Raven was certainly a lot more vocal than you were, obviously, and Raven's
Yeah.
Raven. I mean, that's to me a guy like you, and I'm not just saying it because you're here. I remember watching your work. I remember watching you, and you had a certain look that I always wondered in the back of my head, what happened and
Yeah.
why.
I always I really think you could actually tag me with the kind of diamond in the rough kind of thing.
You remind me, I'm going to go back to music. You remind me of a band that I'm friends with, King's X. And the Kings were a great band. They were there. They played Woodstock. They played open with AC/DC, but they had a record deal, on Atlantic Records, but they never really sold any records because for whatever reason, they had the look that the musicianship was great. And you're kind of the same way. Your ring ability was good. You looked good. You had the look of the time, but for whatever reason, you didn't.
Yeah, I know. That's super frustrating because I feel like had you put me in a spot that you put a lot of other guys in, like, give me that test match with Undertaker. Put me out there with one of the top guys and see if I can go, because I guarantee you, I'll go. I mean, that's how Benoit was to me. My matches, I'm like always. It's not like I sink to the level of the competition that I'm with. But it's like when it's highest
in WCW 3-4 minutes, you're wrestling the British Bulldog, and they gave you like 3 minutes. I mean,
yeah. And they were talking through the match too, which irritated me. Eric came on the set on that.
Yes, he came on the set, and then it was like they didn't even.
And they were talking NWO stuff. Now, a cool thing on that, got to give Davey Boy his props. He was like Benoit, man.
Yeah,
Davey Boy was a great guy in the back. Treated me really, really well. That was the only match we ever worked. But I remember, and this is another thing that sticks out with that question you asked me earlier. It goes into ties into that. I remember I went up to him and asked, what I was like, what do you want to do in this match? Where do you want to go? And he goes, no, he goes, that's not how this is going to work. He goes, you tell me what you want to do, how this match is going to go. And I go, what? He goes, yeah. He goes, if I sit here and tell you how this match is going to go and lay this out, you're not learning. I want you to tell me, lay out and I'm not kidding you. He had me lay out that whole entire match we did was mine.
Yeah, I remember.
And he was like, and I was like, this is the British Bulldog.
And
I'm going, this is like one of the coolest things. I've never had anybody do that. Chris did to a certain degree, but not in those terms. He didn't say that to me like Davey did. Davey was just like, no, you need to learn. And, he and even Jim Neidhart, those guys, never, Brett, I had the few, never treated me like I was this young kid or anything. Very, very respectful, and they didn't have to be. And then there are other guys that were not even close to their status and would treat you like,
I think Brett, respected this industry. I think that he, really, he's very vocal about wrestling. And, in the British Bulldog, I mean, he is the British Bulldog. And I think that, those are, great names. And to me, it's a what if. But, before I let you go, is there anything you want to say or anything you want to talk about that we haven't got a chance to cover?
No, I don't know, unless there's any stories you want.
I mean, I think, listen, you should certainly write a book. I'm going to try to help you with that. I do have a lot of content. You did a lot of these podcasts. I'm going to see what I can come up with. I had a guest yesterday that has a talent agency. I'm going to specifically tell him to talk with you. So I'm going to see if I can certainly figure something out, because I think you have a lot of stories there, and, they should be put out for people to, to read, because I think you have a journey to me that's really unique and important for people. I have one more question, actually, before we sign off. I'm glad we segued. Is you've done so much. You've done a lot of different things, whether it's wrestling, the football field, obviously what you've done, your businesses, everything you've done that's been so successful. But I get a lot of up and coming musicians on here, a lot of up and coming wrestlers that come on the platform as well. Do you have any advice for anybody that's up and coming?
Yeah, God, it's so tough now because it's like the advice I'd want to give would be so old school in terms of developing that character. Some of the stuff we kind of talked, I talked earlier in that development of working. Um, but I think it's to find your niche, no matter what it is. And I think there's still a niche, and I still think there's an opportunity for some of that old school to come back, where it's a little slowed down and they develop the characters. But no matter what you do, it would be to find 3 or 4 good moves that you can put into your match, or if, at the very least, if you can do more, and maybe have them make integral parts, things that you do really well. Because, like I said, I always implemented my back springboard elbow from inside the ring. I almost always did the springboard drop kick from the outside. I would do the F5. I don't know. I didn't have a name for what I did, but I would do that modified F5. I did one that didn't get a lot of play because I did it more on a lot of dart matches, but I'd, run up in the turnbuckle and do the 8, the 10 count with the punches.
Yes, I remember that.
But then I'd grab somebody by the back of the neck and I'd pull them out and face plant them.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember.
Yeah, I did that a few times, and it's like those are like, find those little things and then build your match around it, but put some personality into what you do. Like at WrestleCade, I was talking to a young guy that was working with Lodi, and he had a great name, and I was like, okay, now you need to take your name. He had like the RKO, and it was like, okay, use that, shorten it up, and when you're hammering a guy, maybe as you throw I mean, this is off the top of my head. I told him, I said, you snap a guy over and pull him back and hammer him on the chest and maybe call out the first initial. Like I'll just use me, for example. Like if I'm using, like I would do the SMF thing, which by the way, I did that in WWE and they told me I had to take it off my trunks because it was too much like the Stone Cold.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was doing that SMF way before, he had FTW on his vest and whatever else he had on there. But I said, so I was like, if it was me, I would do something where I go form a guy and go S and maybe get them and then pause a minute and then hit him again and go M, and then so on for the fun. And then, like find little tricks like that, and Paige taught me that. He goes, you want to find things that are very tied into the culture. You want to do things that are easy for fans to react to.
That was in the documentary that was talked about, where DDP was always trying to stay ahead and relevant. You want to
always be relevant and tap into what's happening current day. And wrestling has always kind of been like that. You watch through the Russians that they did, obviously through NWA. Then you get into the Iranian stuff with the Sheik.
The greatest example of that is Chris Jericho, because today he's still relevant. I mean, 30 years ago, he's still the
he's the master. He's the master because he's been able to not so much reinvent himself, but keep it fresh.
Yeah,
keep it relative to what's happening. So, that advice would be, obviously that, but find your little signature stuff that you do that sets you apart from everybody else. Because everybody, for the most part, if they're in the ring, they should be able to go lock up, headlock, take over, tackle, drop down, hip toss, block, hip toss, whatever. Everybody should be able to do that. And you should be able to move through your match. And I think, a big key is to find those times to where you bring that character out, because that's what really attracts people's attention. I mean, to me. Because you can sit there, and that's one thing I found fault with myself that I started doing, because it was a hard transition going out of WCW to WWE because it was a slower pace in WCW. WWE was like, well, one is a bigger ring. That was a harder adjustment. Yeah. Believe it or not, it's only by like a couple feet, but harder in terms of it made a huge difference. I knew that WCW ring, every inch of it, and where I needed to be on my steps, where I needed to be, and how fast I needed to get there. WWE took a little time, but they started doing this. They wanted everything going like, and they were running things a lot quicker because a lot of guys had a hard time adjusting coming up. even like Wrath, Brian Clark and Brian Adams,
Oh,
they had a hard time in
they were
that match with
yeah.
Undertaker and Kane
Oh my
because of the
god.
pace.
Yep. Well, Buff Bagwell, he wrestled the one match, and that was
Yeah.
that. I mean,
Yeah, and it was like it was just a faster pace, and so I kind of got into this mode where I'm doing what the standard blueprint is. Like
right, right.
they kept telling me like when you like they would even tell me don't do your springboard drop kick anymore. Like they told me that in my dart matches because they're like you got matches that we're not to pop the crowd right now, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to vibe for
Yeah,
a
exactly.
spot.
Some matches you had in the dark matches, they were like really into it, and others they were chanting boring. I mean,
Yeah, it's well, and its crowds can be tough, and especially when they don't know you. Like I would have been, I think I would have been a lot better off had I been able to do the sick boy character from the get go.
Yeah, you would have been known. You were coming out there, and yeah,
Yeah, like I think
But
it
that's
would
why
because
you
they would
feel
have
like
known
one
it.
of the most unique examples because you were on WCW TV for about
Yeah,
18 months, and then they put you out there. They give you the call, but they don't.
yeah,
They never acknowledged
yeah.
you. They never acknowledged you or had you in any way, but you were there. To me, look, it's what it is. But I'm acknowledging you. I'm acknowledging you here as a Hall of Famer, and I'm
I
going to certainly.
appreciate
I already put a message out to somebody I know. Let me see if I can help you in any
it.
way possible with the people with that. So I want to take care of you there. And I want to pass the baton to you. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? The floor is yours, sir.
Oh, thank you. I think we plugged it all. You can just check me out on Instagram and Facebook. And like I said, I'm in the infancy of all that, and I'm trying to grow it and get going. And
We'll help you out with that. We'll help you out. We'll help you out.
so yeah, like doing these podcasts, it's great to get out there and get some exposure. So that I know in all this you have to, especially with me, I'm not the most technologically advanced when it comes to a lot of things, just because I've been out of it and haven't immersed myself in technology as far as the social media stuff. But um, it's all learning, and I know you got to crawl before you walk before you run, kind of thing. So
Yeah, my dad
yeah,
was a drum teacher. He'd always say you have to sit there and practice repetition, repetition. And I didn't listen to him.
it's like everything. I'm learning how I as I go. I'm like kind of
Yeah,
learning the do's and don'ts,
yeah.
on certain things. Just so yeah, I mean that's basically it for right now. That's all I'm doing.
No, you're doing great. Now, listen, you're doing great. We're going to help you out. You're always welcome here, and I'm going to definitely give you the physical copy or certificate. I've already put a message out to somebody, and now I'm going to take care of you with a few other people I know. We'll see what I can do to help you with, and that is, of course, the one and only Sick Boy, a man that was certainly a huge staple of WCW in their peak, and that was certainly the Monday Night Wars. He was also part of Raven's Flock, and also you've seen him on other places, but most notably you saw him here, and he's now the newest member of the Sportzwire Radio Hall of Fame. Please follow him on Instagram. Check him out on Facebook. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice, figuratively and literally, with all music and wrestling matters. If you're here on Sportswire Radio, like, share, and subscribe. And until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio, with all music and wrestling